All right. Welcome back, everyone, for another deep dive. We love to explore these big questions.
Mm-hmm.
And today we're tackling one that's, well, it's pretty personal.
Yeah.
Finding your own voice, but
Yes.
specifically when it comes to faith, right? How do we talk about God? How do
Absolute.
we make our faith our own?
Really good question.
So to help us unpack all of this, we're going to be looking at
Yeah.
Listen to God and Find Your Voice. It's by Gary Matthews.
Oh, interesting.
And hopefully by the end of this, you'll feel a little more confident, a little more equipped to speak your truth
That's a great goal.
when it comes to faith, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with that, feeling like they have permission to
Right.
speak their own truth about God. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's something Matthews really hits on in the book.
Mm.
Has you ever felt like, and I know I have at times, right, that your understanding of God
Mm. Yeah.
it's almost like an echo chamber, right?
Yeah.
You were taught this growing up, and it's just what you say, but you haven't really, internalized it and made it your own.
Right. Yeah.
And Matthews really challenges that, right? He's saying, look, God actually wants us to move beyond that, beyond those kind of childish ways of thinking and speaking about faith.
Yeah. He really emphasizes the importance of that maturation process
Yeah.
in our relationship with God.
And to do that, we need to kind of step into a more authentic relationship, more mature relationship that's really built on love.
I love that. Yeah.
So one of the things that Matthews does really well in the book is he uses this really powerful parallel between, our spiritual development and think about a child, right?
Okay.
Learning to talk.
Yeah.
And he says, the word child denotes one who has no language to speak what they think or know other than imitating their parents who are around them. What are your initial thoughts on that analogy? What jumps out at you?
Well, I mean, I think it's such a simple but profound way to really illustrate how we initially absorb the religious language and the beliefs of our upbringing, often without really questioning them or internalizing them
Right.
on a deeper level. And it's like you said, that child just mimicking their parents' words
Yeah.
without fully grasping their meaning. So we kind of inherit this vocabulary,
Right.
but it's not really connected to any depth of understanding.
It's almost like we're just going through the motions,
Yeah.
reciting these familiar phrases, these familiar ideas, but we don't really know what they mean to us
Yeah.
personally. And even, Matthews points out babies, right? I mean, they
Sure.
communicate, they have needs,
Sure.
but it's through basic needs, right? It's a smile, a cry, a whine, whatever it is.
Yeah.
They haven't formed these complex thoughts. And he even says, he's like, little by little, they gain a voice, but it is simply an echo
Mm.
of those surrounding them. So how do we, that's the big question, right?
Yeah.
How do we break free?
It's a journey
Yeah.
from that spiritual mimicry.
Yeah. So what are some steps that we can take?
Well, I think, Matthews would say it starts with moving beyond that blind acceptance
Yeah.
and really embracing that critical examination
Okay.
of our beliefs
Mm.
and really asking ourselves, okay, what feels genuine to me? What
Yeah.
really resonates on a personal level?
Yeah. I think it's so easy to just kind of go on autopilot
It is.
and not really examine
Mhm.
those beliefs that were handed down to us. He's saying, true spiritual maturity involves,
It's a process
Yeah.
of shifting from an ego-based understanding of God, which
Right.
often relies on fear and control,
Right.
to one that's grounded in love and grace.
and that's a big shift, right?
It is.
Because I think a lot of us, without even realizing it, we approach God from a place of what can I get? Or how do I,
Or what do I need to do?
yeah, exactly.
So please. Yeah.
Rather than approaching it from this place of love and grace. You mentioned putting away childish things.
Yeah.
What exactly does Matthews mean by that
Yeah.
in the context of faith? What are those childish things that we need to kind of let go of?
Yeah, it's not about literally throwing away your childhood toys, right?
Yes.
It's more about,
Oh,
those beliefs that we're clinging to
right.
out of fear or blind acceptance,
Okay.
rather than a place of personal conviction.
Gotcha.
So it's really about asking ourselves, what are some beliefs that I just accepted
Mhm.
without question, and what truly resonates with me now,
Yeah.
and what maybe feels out of alignment with where I am now?
So it's not about discarding everything we were taught. It's more about kind of that examination,
Exactly.
taking inventory and saying, okay, this feels right, this doesn't.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, that's really helpful. And one of the things I really appreciate about how Matthews talks about this is he gives this example, right? He contrasts the ego-based understanding of God with a love-based understanding. So for somebody who might be listening and saying, okay, I'm not sure I quite get that, what would be an example of kind of each of those?
Sure, yeah. So an ego-based understanding, might lead someone to focus on earning God's favor, right?
Okay.
Through strict adherence to rules,
Gotcha.
right? Like, I need to do all these things right,
Yeah.
so God will love me.
Yeah, it's almost like a checklist,
It
right?
is. It is. And a love-based understanding would emphasize more compassion,
Okay.
forgiveness, and the inherent goodness within each of us.
Okay.
And it's less about, what you
It's
do.
who you are.
It's more about just being, yeah, exactly.
I see what you mean. So it's almost like moving from a transactional relationship with God
That's a great way to put it.
to a more relational one.
Yeah, I like that.
And later on in the book, Matthews actually personifies grace.
Okay.
He gives it this voice, and it's so interesting how he describes it, right? It's this very soothing voice of reason.
Hmm.
And he writes this, he says, grace is graceful, right? And says, sweetheart, I love to listen to your words and questions. When you are ready to listen, I am ready to speak and inform you of higher thinking.
That's beautiful.
What strikes you about that description of grace? What jumps out at you?
I mean, it's that voice that is patient and loving.
Yeah.
And encourages that deeper understanding
Yeah.
that we were talking about before. It's not this harsh,
Right.
judgmental voice. It's really this gentle guide
Okay.
that's guiding us towards truth.
So it's not dogma or fear.
Exactly. It's something deeper.
Yeah, and it's interesting because he talks about listening to that inner voice.
Right.
Right? But then he goes on, he's like, okay, but now you have to speak
Yeah.
from this place of love too. Don't just listen, speak.
Right.
And he urges us, he's like, speak from your heart, every love-filled word that comes up. And then he even says, and this is kind of a bold statement,
Yeah.
he says, when you look in the mirror, right, you should see God's reflection in your face because you're speaking God's language. You're speaking the language of love. So what do you make of that?
I mean, I think it's such a beautiful...
It's a powerful image.
It is. It's a way of expressing that idea that our authentic selves are really reflections of the divine.
Okay.
And so when we speak from that place of love, we're really aligning ourselves
Yeah.
with those qualities. It's not that our words are literally becoming divine, but it's more about
the intention
the energy and the intention
behind them.
Exactly.
So finding our voice, it's not just about questioning those old beliefs, but it's about expressing this new understanding, this evolving understanding in a way that feels true
Yes, absolutely.
to it.
It's finding that language
Yeah.
that resonates with our soul.
And that can take a lot of different forms, right?
It can.
It might be, through prayer.
Sure.
It might be through creative expression.
Could be acts of service.
Acts of service, absolutely.
Just honest conversation.
Yeah, even just how we live our lives day to day.
Absolutely. How we
Yeah.
treat others. Yeah.
Exactly. It's about shedding that borrowed language and kind of stepping into this authentic expression
It's a beautiful image.
of who we are
It is.
and how we relate to God.
Yeah.
So as we kind of wrap up this deep dive, what would be your final takeaway for our listeners? What do you want them to kind of walk away with?
If you could have a conversation with God, right, but using your unique voice, what would you say? What questions would you ask? What kind of love-filled language would you use? Let those questions kind of guide your exploration.
Wow, that's really powerful. So much to think about there. I really appreciate you joining us for this deep dive into finding our own voice in matters of faith.
My pleasure.
So much to keep exploring, right?
Yeah.
Keep questioning, keep speaking our truth.
Absolutely.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.
Looking forward to it.